Well, here we are. This is our first one. I need a shave, and I'm sorry I didn't do that today. Uh, yeah, I got to straighten up around here, but I think the content is more important than the looks. My name is Mark Tripp, and if you've been in the martial arts for a while, especially on the internet, you have probably heard of me. If you're in Gracie Jiu Jitsu or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you probably don't have fond thoughts of me. And we'll get into all that as we go through these things. Um, excuse me. Uh, I have a legitimate sixth degree black belt in judo. Actually, took my test years ago in public at the Spirit of the Eagle camp in Bluffton, Ohio. And I also, in USJA Jiu Jitsu, happen to hold a ninth degree black belt. This is interesting because once again, yesterday, I got into a pretty big, heated internet debate. We'll get into all of these things in subsequent programs. Uh, I'll just quickly say for all of you, uh, these people at the USJA group on Facebook were postulating that unless you knew your kata, you had no business wearing a black belt. And these people really pontified on that. And I have a couple of experiences that changed my mind about that. If you go way back to UFC 5, we trained Dan Severin for that. Now I know Dan doesn't mention that anymore. And when we get to that in the program, I have a few pictures that are going to be problematic for Mr. Severin. But as we were training him, he wanted to go into some judo tournaments and apply what he had been learning. And this is Dan Severin, guys. This is a nationally ranked Greco Roman wrestler. So here's a little concept. What division should we put Dan Severin in? With the green belts and white belts and beginners? I mean, after all, he doesn't know any kata, so he shouldn't be with a black belt on, right? You pinheads. If it's your kid or your student in amongst those beginners, you're going to be pissed as hell if Dan Severin is in their division. Of course, you put him in the black belts. Years ago, I had a young lady training with us, and she was the national women's freestyle wrestling champion. And we went to Ohio one year for the USJA Nationals. What division should I have put the national freestyle wrestling champion in? But you couldn't convince anybody of that last night. Oh no, you didn't know kata, so you can't fight with the black belts. Why do I tell that story before we begin? It's because there are so many ignorant morons in martial arts. And we're supposed to have fewer of them in a martial art like judo, where you've got a reality check called Randori or Shiai. Look them up. Excuse me, please. I've been having indigestion problems for a while. I'm waiting to see the doctor. Don't know how many of these I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to try. Anyway, I just say that so that you can get it firmly in your mind that there's a great many people out there that are just clueless. If you don't understand coming into the game that you don't take a national wrestling champion, or heaven's sakes, an Olympian. I mean, when Ron Tripp fought in the Midwest Ladder Tournament, he fought as a white belt. Now, in a ladder tournament, there are no divisions. Everybody fights everybody. Because the concept is you're going to find out where you are on the ladder. And Ron beat everybody. When he got his gold medal, he had a black belt on. There's this concept in judo called batsugun, which means to promote by fighting, that most people don't follow anymore. But Ron Tripp at that time was a gold medalist freestyle wrestler from the Pan American Games. I would expect him to beat everybody there. But this stuff, where, oh no, because you don't know the kata, you're out of your mind. You're going to get somebody hurt. And one of the things you study when you study these things is called sports law. Don't neglect that, folks, because there's a thing in there called mismatch, and you ignore it at your peril. But let's get started. What we are going to do here is I am going to give you a pretty complete lesson, series of lessons on the history of martial arts in America, where they came from, what happened when they got here, and basically how most of them rose and fell as our flavor of the month, as I like to call it, as they became the in thing to study, and then they fell out of favor, and then something else took over. Before I do, I want to sort of arm you with the things to look for. So we begin with the concept of what is advertising. Well, the fact of the matter is, you see it all the time. You just don't think about it. And these pieces, these things that make good advertising are always found in the latest martial art fad. Now, obviously, advertising goes back a long way. But for our purposes, there's one ad we begin by focusing on. And to quote, it is the ad that made a man out of Mac. What the heck is that? If you know, you get brownie points. You get to play for the car. But seriously, years ago, they were interviewing Jack LaLanne. I'm old, you're not, so I understand. You may not know who that is, but he was the Richard Simmons of the 1950s. He did an exercise program for all the housewives, and he did strongman stunts to keep his name in the paper. And they were interviewing him once about these ads. And he said that this particular individual, and I won't give his name yet or it gives the whole thing away, had an exercise course that was sitting around doing nothing, couldn't sell it. And then a cartoonist who was also an ad guy put something together. And they put these ads in magazines and eventually, very wisely, in comic books. And the program took off. Who wrote the ad or who was it about? Well, I didn't get a chance to do my research today. You guys all have Google, you can do it. But he was known as Charles Atlas. And he had the very first program, really, of isometric exercise. Now, if you think isometric exercises were going to make you look the way those pictures of Charles Atlas looked, I've got a bridge in New York I'm trying to sell. And when I was a kid, that was one of the things I sent my money away for, to see what it was all about. But the easiest way to figure it out is let's talk about the ad. It was a cartoon and it was classic. You had a guy on the beach with his girlfriend. The big bully runs by and kicks sand in their face. The guy stands up to yell at the bully, and the bully comes back and takes him and says, "I'd punch you in the face, but you might blow away," and walks away. And the guy says, "Oh, he gives me a pain." And his girlfriend leaves him. Talk about a mess. And then the guy goes home. He's all upset. He sends away for his Charles Atlas course. He makes a He-Man out of himself. He goes back to the beach. He sees the bully and he says, "Are you back here? Here's something I owe you." And he pops him and knocks him down. And all the women on the beach, even though he's just committed assault and is going to have to go to jail, not in this cartoon, all the women come and get around him and feel his muscles. And oh, he's the hero of the beach. In fact, the cartoon says that. And young men across America sent in their money because they related to that ad. When we look at an ad like that, and I guarantee you the way that ad was written and how successful it was, you could pretty much see other ads following that line of progression. All these ads for judo and jujitsu, and that was first, jujitsu, then judo. Again, you've got computers, or you wouldn't be watching me. Google it, and you can look them up. You can look up the original Charles Atlas ad. But all of those ads for what would become martial art fads had two very important parts to it. You could probably push it to three. Number one, they had a UPS. And I'm not talking about the United Parcel Service. Every quality ad has a unique positioning statement. Let's prove that. You deserve a break today. You automatically knew that was McDonald's because that's their unique positioning statement. Like a good neighbor. Barry Manilow, in one of his concerts, did a whole string of those commercials that I guess when he was coming up in the business, he wrote. Those are unique position statements. Hot and ready in 30 minutes or less, which you don't hear anymore because there were so many accidents trying to get those pizzas to you that Domino's got sued big time. Well, and we'll talk about everybody sooner or later, but let's talk about, frankly, very briefly, probably the most effective and greatest unique positioning statement that was ever made in advertising. We go back to the 90s. We go back to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu when it came to the United States. And what did Horian's ad say? Martial arts don't work in a real fight. Folks, that is a unique positioning statement. And we'll eventually talk about the Gracies. Don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. The other thing in the ad, and then we'll talk specificity to martial art ads, is almost always in the ad, there was what they call a penis shrinking comment. In the Charles Atlas ad, when the guy says, "Oh, that guy gives me a pain," What does his girlfriend say? His girlfriend says, "Don't let it bother you, little man." A penis shrinking comment. We all relate. And as guys, we don't want that to happen. And that gets your attention pretty quick. And notice at the end of the ad, after he commits assault and punches this guy in the face, all of the women on the beach are hanging all over him and feeling his muscles. Penis restored. Now, as far as martial art ads go, two other things. Number one, absolutely, positively, 10 easy lessons. This stuff is not going to be hard to learn. Number two, size and strength not required. Yeah, it is always in all of these ads about a little guy kicking the crap out of a bigger guy. All martial art fads are based on that. The little guy kicks the crap out of the bigger guy. And the truth is, folks, that just doesn't happen. If it was true, if such a thing was possible, you wouldn't have weight classes in combat sports. Boxing wouldn't have lightweights and heavyweights. It just is what it is. So every ad you've ever seen has those things in it. Now, we're not going to go real long today. I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. And then next week on Sunday, we're going to start with jujitsu, not Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, the original jiu-jitsu programs, and why Kanu changed it to judo, how that stuff all came over here. But here are some things to do. Number one, Google is your friend. I knew that phone was going to ring. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.
Call from EDU. Good night.